Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're headed over to Copenhagen
Ooh, nice.
to take a look at Orstedes. So this is Copenhagen's first skyscraper.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was built almost 90 years ago, and it was built for a concrete company.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's now like a really bustling hub for creative businesses.
I love that.
And the way that they've like kind of blended the history with the modern design
Yeah.
is super fascinating.
It's really, really a unique building.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of a skyscraper, you don't really picture raw concrete,
Right.
but that's exactly what this building is all about.
Yeah.
It's a really great example of functionalist architecture.
Yeah.
A style that was, all the rage back in the 1930s when it was built.
So for those of us that aren't like total architecture buffs,
Right.
what does functionalist actually mean?
Well, I mean, think practicality and purpose.
Huh.
So functionalist architects like Kaj Gottlob,
Good.
who designed this building,
Okay.
really believed that form should follow function.
Interesting.
So they stripped away all the unnecessary ornamentation.
Yeah.
And they focused on clean lines, simple shapes, and of course, functionality.
And I mean, considering this building was for a concrete company,
Right.
Christiani and Nielsen,
Right.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that they would choose raw concrete as like their
Yeah.
star material.
Makes sense.
Do you think that Gottlob was making kind of like an artistic statement with that, or was it purely functional?
It's interesting,
Yeah.
I mean, there is a certain rawness to it.
Yeah.
An honesty to the exposed concrete.
Yep.
It's almost like they just wanted to celebrate the material in its purest form.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you look closely,
Yeah.
you'll notice these really intricate reliefs on the facade. So they did add a touch of artistry to the design.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a blend of both.
I see that makes sense.
Yeah.
A blend of like practicality
Right.
and this like subtle artistry.
Yeah.
Now fast forward, almost a century later, and the building is getting like a
Yeah.
total makeover,
Big time.
courtesy of ATP Dome, who are the current owners.
Right.
But it sounds like they're trying to like walk this tightrope between
Yeah.
modernization and preservation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly it. I mean, they're trying to bring it up to 21st century standards, but without erasing its character.
Right.
So for instance, they've been painstakingly removing these dropped ceilings
Oh, wow.
to restore the original 4-meter high ceilings.
Yeah. Can you imagine that sense of space?
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It's amazing how like something as simple as ceiling height can totally change the feel of a space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they didn't just stop there. They're also reinstalling the Erstedhis name
Oh,
above the main entrance,
nice.
using these beautiful copper letters, just like the original design.
I love that.
So, small detail, but it really shows their commitment to the building.
It shows that they care.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by this whole idea of blending the old and the new.
Right.
It's not just about like preserving history.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you make it relevant and functional for today?
Exactly.
What were some of the challenges that they faced in striking that balance?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest hurdles was definitely figuring out how to improve the building's energy efficiency
Right.
without, messing with the original design elements.
Right. So they had to like add insulation and update systems while still like respecting the original design.
Exactly.
That sounds tricky.
They had to get creative.
What were some of the solutions that they came up with?
So for one, they found these energy efficient windows that look just like the original ones.
Wow.
And they used sustainable materials wherever they could.
That's really cool. So they're like kind of weaving
Yeah.
sustainability into this historic building.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, it can't just be all about aesthetics and energy efficiency.
Right.
I mean, they have to think about how people are actually going to use the space.
Of course.
I mean, it is a hub for creative businesses now.
And that's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
They're not just renovating, they're really reimagining how the space can be used
Right.
for collaboration and innovation.
Yeah.
And you can see that especially in the way they approach the third floor.
Yeah.
They totally redesigned it to accommodate this modern advertising and media agency.
Oh, wow.
And get this, the layout is super flexible.
Oh.
We're talking movable walls, modular furniture, spaces that can adapt to different needs.
So you're telling me that this nearly century-old building
Yeah.
can just like morph and change to meet the demands of
Oh, yeah.
a fast-paced creative industry.
It can. It's amazing.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And you know what's really interesting is that this reflects a broader trend that we're seeing with workplace design in general. It's moving away from these like traditional static office layouts toward these more dynamic, collaborative environments.
Right.
It's all about creating spaces that can adapt
Yeah.
to the ebb and flow of creative work.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of flexible spaces, you mentioned something about transforming the ground floor canteen.
Oh,
Tell
yeah.
me more about that.
Well, just imagine this. You have your morning team meeting in this bright, airy space. Then it's lunchtime, and that same space transforms into this, like, bustling hub where everyone gathers, connects, refuels, and then later you can host a client presentation in the same space.
Wow.
Just with a different configuration. So it's multifunctional.
I love that.
And it fosters a real sense of community.
You know, it's funny because we often think of community spaces
Right.
as like separate from workspaces.
Yeah.
But our status seems to be like blurring those lines.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's brilliant. It's all about encouraging those chance encounters, you know, those informal interactions that can spark new ideas.
Yeah.
Like you bump into a colleague from another department while you're getting coffee, and suddenly you're brainstorming a new project.
Right.
That's the magic of these kinds of spaces.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's not just about desks and meeting rooms. It's about creating an environment where people just feel comfortable, inspired, and connected.
Exactly.
Which makes sense considering the types of businesses that are drawn to Orstetis.
Oh, absolutely. This place has become a magnet for creative companies.
Yeah.
Design studios, tech startups, advertising agencies.
Right.
You name it. They're flocking here.
Wow.
And it's not just because it's cool to work in a former skyscraper.
Right. I mean, Copenhagen is a pretty trendy city.
Yeah, exactly. Location is key.
Yeah.
And Orstetis has a prime spot.
Yeah.
It's a stone's throw from Vesterport Station,
Right.
which is a major transportation hub, and Rådhusplatsen, which is Copenhagen's town square.
Nice.
But I think there's something else at play here.
Yeah.
It's less tangible.
Okay.
The building itself has a certain energy, you know, a vibe
I know what you mean.
that just resonates with creative minds.
As you're talking, I'm picturing that really visually striking spiral staircase.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a giant sculpture winding its way through the building,
Yeah.
almost like inviting you to explore.
Totally.
Do you think that that sense of movement and discovery
Yeah.
contributes to the creative energy?
I think it definitely plays a part.
Yeah.
It's not just functional, you know,
Right.
it's like a work of art.
Yeah.
And you're right, it encourages movement and interaction.
Yeah.
Imagine walking up those stairs
Yeah.
and bumping into another tenant and just striking up a conversation.
Right.
Maybe even sparking a new collaboration.
Totally.
That's the kind of environment they've created here.
They've created a space that encourages like individual focus,
Yeah.
but also like spontaneous collaboration.
Exactly.
And from what I've read, they've also gone beyond just the physical space to cultivate a sense of community in the building.
Yeah, they organize events,
Oh, wow.
workshops, networking opportunities. They really understand that innovation happens at the intersection of different disciplines and perspectives.
Totally.
You know?
I love that they actually included a quote from one of the tenants.
Oh, yeah.
Karina Holm Henriksen.
Yeah.
She's a partner at Make a Creative consultancy firm.
Right.
And she talks about this inspiring and collaborative atmosphere of Orstetis.
Yeah.
She says, it's not just a place to work. It's a place to connect and create.
I love that.
I think that just sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
It's more than just an office building.
It really is.
It's an ecosystem.
It is.
And it's a testament to the vision of the owners
Yeah.
who saw the potential of this historic building and found a way to make it relevant for the 21st century. They haven't just preserved the past.
Right.
They've woven it into the present.
Exactly.
And they've created a space that's both modern and timeless.
It really is.
Speaking of the past, we haven't really talked about the specifics of the restoration.
Oh my gosh, where do we even begin?
Yeah.
I mean, they meticulously cleaned and restored those raw concrete facades.
Oh, wow.
And they replaced the original window and entrance sections.
Okay.
But they stayed true to the original design.
I mean, it's amazing to think that those features,
No.
designed almost a century ago,
Yeah.
still have the power to, like, inspire and captivate us.
It's incredible. Yeah. Even the round aluminum main staircase has been polished to a shine.
Wow.
So, again, they're preserving the history.
Yeah.
But they're adding this touch of like modern elegance.
Right.
And throughout the entire renovation, they were so careful to maintain the original functionalist details.
Yeah.
Those clean lines, those simple shapes that really define the building's character.
Yeah. They've thought of everything.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful example of how preservation and progress can go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Now I have to ask, any fun facts about Arstetis?
Ooh, fun fact.
Anything that would make our listeners say,
okay, let me think.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, so for those of you who are fans of Danish television, you might recognize Arstetis from the popular sitcom Langt fra Las Vegas.
Oh, really?
They actually used the facade as a backdrop for the show.
That's so cool.
So the building itself has become a bit of a celebrity.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like a little piece of Danish pop culture history is embedded in the building.
Totally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Which brings us to like a bigger question.
Yeah.
What can we learn from the story of Arstetis?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it raises a really interesting point.
Right.
In a world that's constantly evolving, what is the role of historic buildings? Do they just become relics of the past? Or can we reimagine them to serve the needs of the present?
Right.
And Arstetis shows us that we can do both.
We can have both.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that buildings aren't just static structures.
Right.
They can evolve.
Yeah.
They can adapt.
Yeah.
They can be vessels for creativity, innovation, and community.
Yeah.
And with a little vision and ingenuity,
yeah,
they can continue to thrive for generations to come.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Me too. Makes you wonder, like, what other architectural gems are out there?
Right.
Just waiting to be rediscovered and reimagined.
Yeah, like all those old factories and warehouses, even department stores that have fallen into disuse.
Yeah. And with a little creativity, they could be like thriving hubs for innovation and community.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like we're playing architectural detective.
Right.
Looking for those diamonds in the rough.
Exactly.
But this kind of adaptive reuse.
Yeah.
It's not just about aesthetics, right?
No, it goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
I mean, revitalizing historic buildings like this can actually be a huge catalyst for urban renewal.
Right.
I mean, it attracts new businesses, creates jobs, and it fosters this sense of community pride.
Right. And from an environmental standpoint, it's much more sustainable than just like
way more
demolishing old structures and building new ones.
Absolutely.
So it's like a win-win.
Huge win-win.
On multiple levels.
Yeah.
You're preserving history.
Yeah.
Creating vibrant spaces.
Yeah.
And promoting sustainability.
All at the same time.
All at the same time.
That's amazing.
It's a beautiful thing.
And it challenges us to like think differently about our built environment.
Totally.
Instead of always like looking to build new.
Right.
We can find ways to like
breathe new life
into the structures that already exist.
I love that.
So we've talked a lot about Arstetis as this like model for adaptive reuse.
But for you personally as an expert in architecture, what inspires you most about this project?
You know what really gets me is the way they've managed to bridge that gap between the past and the present.
Right.
They haven't just preserved the building's history, they've actually made it relevant for today's world.
It's like a fusion of the old and the new.
Totally. It's also a reminder that good design is timeless.
And that buildings can evolve. You know, they can adapt to changing needs.
Totally.
And times while still honoring their past.
Absolutely. Arstetis is a perfect example of that.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Arstetis, what's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we don't have to choose between preserving our heritage and embracing the future.
Right.
We can have both.
I love that Arstetis is a shining example.
It really is.
Of how history and modernity can coexist beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's a story that's relevant far beyond Copenhagen.
Totally.
So to our listener, the next time you walk through your city, take a closer look at those historic buildings.
Yeah. You never know what hidden potential they might hold.
Who knows? You might just find the inspiration for your own adaptive reuse project.
Exactly.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
And let's continue to explore the fascinating world of architecture together.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Makes you wonder, like, what other architectural gems are out there just waiting to be rediscovered, you know?
Right, like all those old factories and warehouses.
Well, totally.
Even department stores that have fallen into disuse.
Yeah, with a little creativity, they could become like thriving hubs for innovation and community.
I love that. It's like we're playing architectural detective looking for those diamonds in the rough.
Right, exactly.
But this kind of adaptive reuse, it's not just about aesthetics, is it?
No, it goes way beyond that. I mean, revitalizing these historic buildings, it can be a huge catalyst for urban renewal.
Right.
It attracts new businesses, creates jobs, and it fosters this sense of community pride.
And from an environmental standpoint, it's way more sustainable than just demolishing and building new.
Absolutely, way more.
So it's a win-win on multiple levels.
Huge win-win.
You're preserving history, you're creating these vibrant spaces, and you're promoting sustainability.
All at the same time, it's a beautiful thing.
And it challenges us to think differently about our built environment.
Sure.
Instead of always looking to build new, we can find ways to breathe new life into structures that already exist.
I love that.
So we've talked a lot about Ørsted as this model for adaptive reuse. But for you personally, as an expert in architecture, what inspires you most about this project?
You know what really gets me is the way they've managed to bridge that gap between the past and the present.
Yeah.
They haven't just preserved the building's history, they've made it relevant for today.
Right, it's like a fusion of the old and the new.
Totally. And it's a reminder that good design is timeless.
And that buildings can evolve.
Right.
They can adapt to changing needs and times while still honoring their past.
Absolutely. Ørsted is like the perfect example of that.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Ørsted, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we don't have to choose between preserving our heritage and embracing the future.
Yeah.
We can have both.
I love that Ørsted is a shining example of how history and modernity can coexist so beautifully.
It really is.
And it's a story that's relevant far beyond the borders of Copenhagen.
Totally.
So to our listeners, the next time you walk through your city, take a closer look at those historic buildings around you.
Yeah, you never know what hidden potential they might hold.
Who knows, you might just find the inspiration for your own adaptive reuse project. Exactly. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. Keep your eyes open, stay curious, and let's continue to explore this fascinating world of architecture together.
Absolutely.
Until next time.